Alrighty, everybody. I'm going to do a quick little tutorial here on how to create a Kirby on Sculpt GL. So first off, we're just going to go look up a picture of Kirby. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and right-click, and I'm going to go ahead and save this image to my desktop. I'll call it Kirby. Now, the reason we want to save it is because we do want to have an image to use. Let's see if that'll work. It's a WebP format. We'll check it out right now. So I'm going to go to Sculpt GL. Everyone, you can look up that website by typing in Sculpt GL, and it'll come up. And Stéphane Guinet, I believe, he's a French guy, I believe. He's the person who designed this app. It's a wonderful app. He's got a for sale app called Nomad Sculpt, which you can download for your iPhone or other, it's a pay for app. But the free one is awesome. And it's the one I use in school, especially because it'll work on a Chromebook. So here we go, Sculpt GL. Let's add a background image. Let's go to background, import. Let's see if it'll load that Kirby. And yes, hopefully it will. Awesome. And then I'm going to change the background, everybody. Again, I went to background, import to add the image. And then I'm going to uncheck fill, because that way, as I move around, I can have that image there. Some of you might prefer to have fill on. Again, I prefer to uncheck it. Just it gives me a little bit of breathing room around the edges so that I can move around. Now, inside of Sculpt GL, everybody, I'm using a mouse, and I would recommend that you plug in a mouse for this because you want to be able to use right-click to orbit. You see that I'm orbiting here. And you can use the middle clicker. If you click down on your middle clicking wheel, you can pan left and right. And then your left click, your normal kind of clicker that we usually click when we click on stuff, is what's going to do the actions for the modeling. Okay? So again, I definitely want to use a mouse. Now I'm going to do a couple other setup things here. I'm going to go up to Scene. I'm going to turn on Show Mirror Line. And that's going to show us a mirror line here. And again, I'm right-clicking to orbit. And the cool thing about this program is it's set up for mirroring. So whatever you sculpt on one side will automatically appear on the other. So I like doing both of those things right off the bat. So again, background, import, and then scene, show mirror line. So now I'm going to go over here to my tools. And let me make this bigger. Pardon me for not having it bigger already. I'm going to go over here to my tools, everybody, and I'm going to go ahead and change this brush, which I currently have. I'm going to just change the values right now to a radius of 20. And when I do that, you'll notice this radius of the brush gets smaller, and the intensity of the brush, I'll also make it smaller. Now, the intensity doesn't change what it looks like on the screen, but it is going to attack with less power, which is good. Now, if I just were to do a normal brush mark here, okay, and then let me increase the intensity back to 50, you'll notice that when I hit it with 50 versus 20, it just kind of accumulates the clay a little faster, okay? If I was to put it at 100 or slide it as far as it goes here, you'll see that it makes even more clay appear kind of quicker, okay? So it's just the intensity of the brush, and actually even adds more texture faster. If I increase the radius, I'll make even more clay even faster, okay? So that's cool, and you can actually design really quickly with this app. You can make a little nose. I could design a little mouth area, put out a little nose there, and for all we know, we could make a little Mario or something, some kind of weird character. But again, I don't want to do that right now, so I'm just going to do Command Z. Or if you're on a Mac, Control Z. And that way we're going to go back. Now here is one annoying thing that happens with this app. And it is free, so this will often happen. And this is a problem I encounter a lot with my students. When we do Control Z or Command Z and go back, sometimes we lose the whole thing. And yeah, that is really a bummer. And really, there's no way to get out of that. You can try to do redo and come back, and usually you'll step back to where you were. But it is a bit of a challenge when it comes to just getting stuck with too many undos. So one of the things I tell my students is that whenever we're working in this program, we want to save it often. So we go to save SGL often so that we avoid those crashes. And this program does crash. I think, again, it's a free web-based program, so sometimes it's just like a RAM issue. I think with the browser and how much file memory it can handle. So that's just one of those things that we got to deal with. So I like to just do save SGL quite often. But before I move any further, I'm just going to go back now to smooth in case, I want to go back to start with nothing. So here I am back to nothing. Okay, anyway, so let's go back to brush. If you saw earlier, everybody, I lowered my intensity to 20 and my radius to 20 just to make it a small, soft brush. And I also was adding clay, but I'm actually going to change it to negative right now. And when I use negative, I'm going to be able to carve out clay. So I'm going to look at Kirby. I'm going to look at my ball here, try to ballpark a similar size and placement. So I'm going to start to carve out an area where I want those eyes to go. Okay, they're about that tall. And I might now go ahead and increase my radius a little bit and increase my intensity so I can dig in a little bit more. And I'm going to dig in a little bit more. Okay, now this takes some practice. I'm using a mouse, which is good, but some of you might have a touch screen, which is awesome. You might actually have more luck with a touch screen. Or if you have a tablet and you have the ability to use like a stylus pen or something, that might even be better. But here I am carving out some holes. Now, the more I carve, everyone, the more I'm going to cut into the clay. You can see I'm cutting into the clay. So if I keep going, and I'm going to do this kind of wrong on purpose, eventually I'm actually going to cut like a little valley in there, which doesn't really look too good. So if you end up going too far, one of the things you can do is go back to smooth. And again, I'm going to do this instead of doing a lot of undos because, as I mentioned before, this program tends to get kind of buggy and crashy, so I'm just going to do smooth, and that's looking pretty good. I might smooth this area here a little bit. I might change the intensity of the brush again like we were doing before. So, I might change it. I might go back and forth. So I'm just going to do a little bit of this a couple times here and there. Just going to cut up a little bit more here. Make it a little bit more pointy at the top. And maybe a little bit more pointy at the bottom. Okay, and then I'm just kind of cutting in here. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back to smooth. I'm going to lower the intensity on that so it's a softer smooth as I go through, and I'm going to smooth it out. And I'm just going to cut out that area, okay? Now, if I made a big mistake, I could start over, but I'm just going to smooth here in the middle. And take a look at it, maybe that's looking pretty good. If I could have made it farther apart, then you know what? I could just start over and just like redo the whole thing. So I'm just going to show you that because you're bound to make mistakes. So if I go to brush, an unchecked negative, I could actually add clay back, right? That's one of the cool things about this program. And then I could go to smooth and smooth it out. So if you make a mistake, don't be afraid to just add clay again and start over. Or let me show you another thing that might happen. If you make a big old mistake, change your tool to transform. This is now controls the ball that's in front of us, and you can use these arrows to move it around. And hopefully, again, it might glitch on us, but hopefully we can do scene, delete selection, and it'll delete. Now again, you notice what happened here, everybody? It lost everything. And again, I wish it didn't happen, but it does. So this is one of those things that, again, I'm warning you about this app. I'm going to save my file right now as file.save.sgl. It's just one of those things that's annoying we have to deal with. So I'm going to try to just go back to Sculpt GL. Let's try this. Here we would start fresh. Because I think it's kind of a better thing just to start over since I haven't gotten very far. But if you did want to open up a previous file, you would go to Scene, Clear Scene. When you start from scratch, File, Add OBJ. On my desktop or my downloads, I should have a saved file. It's a yourmesh.sgl. and you'll notice it'll open up, and this is where I left off last time, which, to be honest with you, I didn't want anyway, so I'm just going to do clear scene again. All right. So hopefully you don't think I'm wasting your time. I just wanted you to know that I love this program, but it can crash, and it doesn't like undos. I'm not sure why that is. There is another option, everybody, here called Go to Sketchfab, which opens up another app, which I think is pretty free. So you might try the Sketchfab option as well. I just know that at my school, we have limits on what we can and can't use, and the fact that this just works in a browser is awesome. So one of the lessons my kids learn is in this program, you really want to avoid having to do too many undos, and you want to save often. Okay, so guess what? We're going to start fresh again because it doesn't hurt to just start over. So we're just going to go to Sculpt GL. This time we're going to get it right. Going to go back. Here's our first thing. We're going to do everything we just did. We're going to import the background of Kirby. We can leave it with a fill on or off, depending however you want. If that works for you, you can leave the fill on. That way it just fills the full screen. Okay, and then now I'm just going to do this all over again. I'm going to go to Scene, Show Mirror Line. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and sculpt. I'll probably change it to 30 this time for both intensity and radius. And remember that we're going to hit negative, okay? So let's space it out. It's not too close together, not too far apart. I'd say his eyes are like over here somewhere, okay? So I'm going to carve out some eyes. And I'm going to go down a couple times. And then around a couple times. I'm just slowly pushing this clay out. Okay. Now, once I've got it feeling pretty good, I might go now hit it with smooth. And I'm going to lower my intensity on smooth because I don't want to smooth the whole thing away. And I don't want it to be too big of a smooth either. So I'm lowering my intensity and my radius. And I'm just going to smooth it out just a touch. You'll notice it's going to soften those edges a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and say that that's good, okay? It's going to be a good start. So far, brush and smooth. Now I'm going to go back to brush, and I'm also going to now cut out the mouth. So the mouth sits right underneath the eyes, and it's going to be a little bit of a triangle shape. I'm doing a lot of scrolling, everybody, and clicking with my mouse. I'm scrolling with my scroll wheel. I'm clicking with my center clicker to drag. I'm using my right clicker to move around, so you're going to get comfortable with driving eventually. And now we're going to go ahead and carve out with the brush set to negative. We're going to carve out the mouth. Okay, carving it out. That looks pretty good. And since it's set to mirror, I can overlap my work here, which is nice. It's just a comfortable going back and forth motion until I carve it out. Okay, so I'd say that's pretty good. And then I'm going to go ahead and maybe hit it once or twice with the smooth. Just a softening here. Not bad. Okay, now, ideally, everybody, these 3D models, what's awesome is that you can paint them here in this program, and you can save them as PNGs, which is great. You can use them in your portfolio as just pictures to show off what you can do as a sculptor in 3D, but you can also save these files to print. And that's a really great thing that we do in our classroom is we save our models and then we print them with our 3D printer. We use a MakerBot Sketch, and it works fine. Saving, you'll notice here in the file menus, you can save in lots of different formats. The format that's been pretty successful in our classroom is STL. We don't do that until the end, but the great thing is that you can save it as an STL file when you have to print. If you wanted to put this in a video game, you also could save as OBJ. The only catch is that a high-res surface like this might slow you down when it comes to a game. And although this seems like a very simple-looking shape, it actually does have a lot of, if you look up here in the corner, it has a lot of vertices and faces. So it actually is a pretty big file. So that is something we can talk about later. But if you are going to put it in a game, you might want to simplify this object for a game. So it's kind of, I think, best suited for printing. Where you only have one object that you have to worry about at a time. Anyway, let's go ahead and save our work now, everybody, like we just did a second ago, but this time we've actually gotten somewhere. This is a great place to save. And like I tell my students, we literally save every few minutes. Every time you do something good, save it. So the other thing to note is that when it saves, everybody, okay? It only names everything as your mesh. So I'm going to keep renaming this, and I'm going to keep renaming it with the name of my file name and also my own name. So usually I have my students do name, their name, of course, Kirby, and then I would say that this is step 1. That way we remember that we just finished the face, okay? And then we'll save it with a bunch of different names. That way also, if in case we have any crashes, we can hopefully avoid the crashes. That again, if this program was not online and not free, we usually wouldn't have to worry about crashing so much. So Blender, for example, is an awesome program. But if you're on a Chromebook, you're out of school, this is what you got to deal with. Okay, so here we are, everybody. Now we have this pretty much done. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and paint it. So let's talk about painting. Let's go to our tools here, and let's go to paint. And obviously we're missing eyes. Don't worry about that. We're going to make eyeballs in a second. But for now, everybody, this is painted. The way it needs to paint, or the way it needs to look, is to match what we see in the Kirby painted, image, so, which is a pink with little cheeks and a red mouth. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and go to paint. Down here where it says albedo, this is where you pick your color. So I'm going to go ahead and slide in the big slider here to try to find a nice pinkish color. And then I slide in this window here to get the correct pink. Now, when you choose a color, it doesn't automatically change it. You now have to press Paint All, and that will apply the color. Now, if you don't like the way the color is appearing, that also has something to do with the way that this program works and just the kind of the way it deals with objects. So if we go up to Scene and we uncheck Darken Unselected, then if we were to select it and we had other objects, we would make sure we're getting the best color. Now, at the moment, it's not a big deal yet, but I do want to turn that off for now, just so you know that we're getting the best color that we can. The other thing that's going to help us define the color is going to be here in rendering. So in rendering, where it says matte cap, and then it says matte cap, the different styles, if you go to white, for example, or green, it changes kind of the base color, the way things work. So some of you might experiment with this and you might like it better with a different setting. For me, Skin Hazardous 2 is kind of the best one, but you might also like Skin Hazardous, the first one. So I'm just showing you, this kind of just changes the way the material exists. I'm just going to keep it on Skin Hazardous 2, but just so you know, that's there. It's a useful thing. All right, back to it here. So let's go back to our tools. Let's go back to paint. So we painted the whole Kirby pink. Again, if you didn't like it, if you wanted to be lighter pink still, I'm going to go to light pink there and maybe paint all again. And then you could also experiment here, everybody, with the roughness values, paint all again. I don't think the metallic and roughness is going to do much for our current skin style, but you guys can mess around with that here. So I'm going to leave it as is, nice light pink. That works for me. Okay, and again, you can keep changing it. If you want it to be even lighter pink or a different color, you can modify all that here. All right, so I'm just going to go to pink, paint all. That's a good pink, at least for now. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the paint bucket here, albedo, everybody, and I'm going to go to the red now. I'm going to find a nice deep red. Now, I don't want to paint the whole thing red, just the mouth, so I'm just going to grab the paint brush now. I'm going to lower my radius a little bit here. And that way I can go in here and paint the mouth red. Awesome. Sounds good. Now, if you go too far, let me make a mistake on purpose. Uh-oh, what do you do? Well, you want to actually remember what color you had the skin at before. So there's actually a tool here called Material Color Picker. So that means it would help me sample this pink. So I'm going to touch that, click on the pink. That's going to load the pink that I need again, which is awesome. And then that way I can use that pink to cover up my mistake. And I can zoom in closer to, deal with this little bit of paint there. And you guys can get closer and closer and closer if you need to. You can also change the hardness of the brush. That makes it softer as you're going around the edges. So if you notice that the brush is looking too pixelated, you could lower the hardness. So I just lowered the hardness a little bit to help to soften the paint. Okay, so I was painting with pink right now, and I feel pretty good about that. Now, for the eyes, everyone, I'm actually going to create some eyes and pop them in there. So I'm going to leave this alone for a second, and I'm going to switch back to another tool to make the eyes. But before that, let's go ahead and grab a slightly darker pink, and let's change our radius a little bit and zoom in, and let's give it some cheeks. Okay, so I'm going to paint some cheeks. Feel pretty good about that. Okay, great. So now I'm going to go to transform. Transform is going to allow me to move the object, so now I'm going to move it over. And the reason I'm going to move it over is because when you make new shapes, they spawn from the center of the screen. So I want to avoid keeping anything in the center. So go to transform, use your arrows, and move it over. Now we're going to spawn a new shape, which we're going to use to make the eyes. So let's go to scene, and let's go to add sphere. This is a great time, again, everybody, to save once again. Again, save as much as you can. Save SGL. Okay. Now, this new sphere needs to be an eyeball, so I actually want to make it a lot skinnier and not so round. I want to make it more like a little piece of rice. So I'm going to drag around. I'm going to use the squares. You'll notice there's these squares, blue square, or I should call them cubes, blue cube, red cube, green cube. These are the ones for actually transforming or squishing your object. So I'm going to take the blue and squish it in. And I'm going to take the red and squish it in. And you'll see what I'm doing. I'm making kind of a pill shape. Okay? I'm going to squeeze it in a little bit more. And I think that's pretty good. And now the orange ring allows me to shrink it. So that's looking pretty good. I'm now going to use my arrows to move it. Now, as you move it, you might get confused. Where am I moving it to? Where is it going? So you can go up to camera, and you can change your camera view to top. I like this view because it shows me my objects, and now I can use my arrows here to drag it into place. There we go. I'm now going to orbit around. I'm looking at it. It looks pretty good. It's a little too big, so I'm going to place it where it needs to be and then use the orange ring to shrink it down. And that's looking pretty good. I'm going to use my arrows now. The arrows move it up and down. I might shrink it down a little bit more. And that looks pretty good. Feel pretty good about that. So now I just might use the blue arrow here to pop it out a little bit. And then I can use these inner circles here. You'll see these inner circles. These allow me to orbit inside. So I'm going to orbit it and pop it so it's a little bit slanted on the model there. And again, probably shrink it just a little bit more. Pop it in. This is going to take some time to get it just right. It's even taking me a couple minutes just to get it right. That feels pretty good. Maybe pop it out just a tiny bit down here and shrink it just a tiny bit more. So I'm shrinking, moving until I get it just right. I'm using the arrows till I get it just right. Now, before I add it again, I'm actually just going to go ahead and paint it and do everything I need to do right now. So I'm going to go to paint. I'm going to start by painting it with a base coat of black. So I'm going to go to black, paint all, boom. Now I know this one needs to have a kind of a round circle near the top and blue near the bottom. And you can even see the way that the eyeball was designed. So I'm actually going to go ahead and get some blue, some kind of light blue. And I'm going to start by drawing a circle up here. Okay, and I have mirroring on, which is helping me. Feel pretty good about that. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and paint blue down here. Now, as I paint the blue down here, okay, you'll notice everybody kind of fades away. So I'm actually going to play with my hardness value here and lower that and soften it as I go up. Soften it even more. and soften my intensity so that it's softer as I go up. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of a fade here. And if I zoom in here and really play with my intensity and lower it even more, I'm going to kind of create a little fade, okay? So I'm going to go around the edges, and I'm going to make that fade color. Now this is going to take a little bit of finessing to really get that fade going, but I think that's working for me right now. Not bad, okay? And then now I'm going to go ahead and get white. And I'm going to go ahead and paint white here in the center. I'm going to increase my intensity again now. Probably bring it all the way to 100. Get a nice deep white in there. I think you can increase your hardness now too, so it paints heavier. All right, we're going around here. Pretty good, not bad. Let's take a look over here. I'd say it's pretty good. Obviously, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. We might actually go now back to black and lower the intensity of black almost all the way to nothing, and lower the hardness too, so that I can increase that little fade idea. So I'm going to make my radius a little bit smaller, and I'm going to fade in here. So I'm going to try to get that gradient feeling. Not bad, okay? Obviously, I can finesse that for everybody, but I think for this tutorial, that's pretty good. So now I've got this eye, so I'm going to go to transform. Now I can go up to scene, and to copy something, you can go to scene, copy selection, boom. Now you'll know it's not, you'll see it and you'll be wondering where it is. It's actually there, it's just hiding under the last one. So you can use your arrow to drag it over. Boom, okay? Now as I compare everybody, you might have some comments. You might think, you know what, your Kirby face could be bigger. Maybe your eyes are in the wrong place. All of that can still be modified. So for example, if I went here to the face and I was to drag, I can make the face way bigger, right? I could distort things if I want to. So you can always go back and change stuff. But again, for now, for today's lesson, I think this is good. I probably could have made the eyes a little bit smaller. I think it'd be more in line with the actual Kirby. But again, for now, we're just going to let it be. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and save it. Scene, or excuse me, save SGL. I'm going to save it again. I'm going to save a whole bunch of times. You'll notice I keep saving and saving and saving. You'll notice the file size is growing, everybody, and that is a bit of a concern because the bigger your file is, the more probability you have that it might not want to open one day. So again, I love this program. I love that it's free, but it does have some limits because you're on a browser. There's issues. Yeah, that's just the way it is. Now let's go back to scene, everybody, and add a sphere. Now this sphere is going to become the little foot. So I'm going to use my green block here to squeeze it down, the red block to squeeze it in, maybe squeeze it down a little bit more, and maybe even pull that out a little bit. That's a nice little round shape. And now I'm going to go to drag it and put it where it belongs here as a little foot. I'm going to use the little circle on the inside to twist it. That looks pretty cool. Maybe another little rotation here to make it a little bit smaller and rotated. So I rotated it and then made it a little bit smaller, maybe even a little bit smaller still. Yeah, and then I'm going to just place it in there. Now, a good thing here is I can copy paste it, but first I'm going to want to paint it. So I'm going to go back to paint. I'm going to grab my red, paint all, boom. And now back to transform. Remember what we did before, scene, copy selection, drag that guy over here. Now, obviously this leg's going in the wrong direction. So use your little inner circles here to twist and turn it. Feel pretty good about that. I'm going to do another copy selection. This one's going to be the little arm. Okay, now this little arm might want to be placed in a different location. So I'll rotate it, maybe rotate it inward a little bit. I feel like that's pretty good. Maybe make it a little bit smaller and a little bit higher. And then maybe pull it out a little bit. That looks pretty good. Now this guy, we're going to want to paint it. And we'll want to paint it the same color as Kirby, so we can go to Material Color Picker under the Paint tool and touch the pink, and then hit Paint All. I made a mistake there. Let's hope I can fix that, everybody. I'm going to do Command Z. See if it'll let me undo that. Oh, yes. This is where I'm glad I just didn't make one mistake and not too many. So here was an error I just made, everybody. When I went to Picker, I did almost the right steps. I went to Color Picker and I sampled the pink, but I forgot one step. I have to go back to Transform, and I have to touch the arm and then go back to paint. So I made a little mistake there, but I'm going to leave it in because you might make that mistake too. Okay, so then I'm going to go back to the arm, and then I'll hit Paint All. Great. Now I'm going to go to Scene, Copy Selection. That's going to copy my arm. So now I got another arm there. Bring this guy up. All right, and then I'm going to make him wave. Boom. Okay, so now everybody, this Kirby is pretty much done. And you might want to do some things like turn off the background. So if you wanted to, you could reset the background and turn it off. That would be nice. That way you don't have to look at that anymore. That way you could show off your work. Obviously, you want to save it. And remember that when you do save it, everybody, I'm on a Mac here, but it'll be the same on the PC. When you're saving your files, just make sure you rename them. So I'm going to call this Kirby, my name, of course, Kirby done. Okay, so that way I know I have a backup of this. Now this is looking great. A couple last things, like we mentioned before, everybody, you might want to change the way that the rendering looks. So if you go up to rendering and you go through the different skin tones, these are just the different ways that the light will shine. So you might like it another way other than it is right now. Again, I'm just gonna go with Skin Hazardous 2. It's been pretty good for me. I think most of the time it works pretty well in class, but you might try white. The thing is you have to do that as you go for each object, but for me, this works. I love this, and it works great. So what I'll do now is if I just go back to any of my other tools like brush, that will deselect everything. If I go back to scene and do show mirror line and turn it off, I get a nice, beautiful picture of my Kirby. And now I would probably just take a screenshot, and that could be something that I could show off. If I went to camera and I did like the left view, camera, top view, camera, front view, that would be also a good thing that you could try to do if you wanted to get like a full view of your model from top, bottom, and side, and you could take screenshots as you go from there. Now, if you're going to want to print this on a 3D printer, my recommendation would be to save it as an STL. That tends to work good with MakerBot printers. That's what we do at school. You might have issues with file size. If you do, guys, this is something that you might want to do. If you go back to selecting your object, so I'm going to go back to transform so I can select my object, and I'm going to zoom in here on my main head shape. If you go into rendering, so we're kind of done now. This is just like extra stuff, okay? If you go to rendering and you look at the wireframe, you'll see basically all the vertices or faces, as we see up here, that make up this box. There's 98,000 vertices. That is a ton, and that means your computer has to process all that. So sometimes you can get away with looking in the topology. And right here where it says resolution of 150, I'm going to actually lower that. Let's see if it changes Kirby a whole bunch. Let's take it down to 75. I'm going to go to voxel remeshing quads, and I'm going to type in 50, okay? And watch what's going to happen to my number value up here when I type in 50 and remesh, okay? It's pretty similar. You'll notice I did lose some definition, okay? Which that's kind of a bummer. But the file type went from 98,000 to 12,000. So it's like way smaller now. So do you want to do that? I'm going to do history undo. Hopefully I go back. Do you want to do that? If you're doing a 3D print, maybe not. You can probably get away with it the way it is. If you're going to put this in a video game, you definitely want to try to do some resolution changes just so that it'll load quicker. There's other things you can do later to optimize stuff in your game engine as well. And to be honest with you, that's even beyond what I know too much of, but I do know just loading files is an issue. So that's something for you guys to think about. Again, to see all that, I went to rendering wireframe, and then to modify it, I went to topology. So again, for printing, this is great. If I know I'm going to use this in a game, maybe like in Unity, or if you're going to put it into Unreal Engine or something else like that, and you know you don't have tons of processing power or space, then you might want to lower that, okay? But let's set it back to brush, everybody, so we can look at our work here. Amazing. Hopefully that helps everybody. I'll be putting up some more tutorials. Please go ahead and leave a comment in the bottom there if you would like me to add anything else. And for my students, good luck with this project, and challenge yourself to make something really difficult. And for anybody out there in YouTube world, same thing. Challenge yourself, make something really difficult. Try it. There's some great tutorials out there if you guys look up Sculpt GL. Again, not the greatest program because of some buggy issues, but it is amazing that it's free. It's amazing that you can do sculpting on it. And shout out to Stéphane Ginet, I believe that's how you say it in French. And shout out to him for also creating his own app that you do pay for, which I have had some students use. So I'm just going to give him a little shout out here. Nomad Sculpt, everybody. That one is available now. And I've had some students use it and they love it. It's a more advanced tool that's way more robust than Sculpt GL. But again, Sculpt GL works on a Chromebook. It works. If it works, we love it. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a great night.